Available on Spotify, Anchor, Pocket Casts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, YouTube, and iHeartRadio.
Everything in this universe has a beginning. The Big Bang. The formation of nebular matter into stars and planets. The first collections of amino acids in the Earth's oceans. The first creatures to leave them. The first mammals. The first primates that walked upright. The first religion. The first printing press.
Pump up your space boots and phone home. It's time for Let's Find Out with co-host Diego.
Live. To tape from the mothership. It's Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. Bigfoot, UFOs, Stargates, let's find out. Paranormal, intelligent design, entertainment, let's find out. You're listening to Let's Find Out with co-host Diego.
Live to tape from the basement of the Alamo. Welcome to another episode of Let's Find Out. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Picture this: Cleveland, 2018. Our guest and his brother witnessed several different objects flying over their home. Also a cube-shaped sphere that ejected a number of orbs. And not soon after that, it's followed by a tic-tac object. Now, we're not going to give too much away in the introduction or too many details right now, but on this episode of Let's Find Out, we have an experiencer and UAP enthusiast that will tell us his amazing eyewitness account of this event. Please welcome to Let's Find Out our new friend, Nate. Nate, welcome to Let's Find Out. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thanks for having me, Diego.
Sure, man. I know we've been trying to set this up for a little while now, and says the pleasure is all on this side of the table because this is actually a first for the show. And I've had some authors, filmmakers, and people who are in that type of business that we've had on the show, and they've had some experiences. But this is the first time where somebody has contacted the show wanting to share their personal story, and like a lot of these stories, they're pretty life changing, right?
Very much so. Yes.
And
My outlook on everything.
yeah, it does change everything about how you see things. It's I call it when your third eye is open and nothing's the same after that. Before we dive into that, so before this event in 2018, have you or any other members of your family had any of these types of experiences?
Well, it wasn't until after this experience that I found out the answer to that question is yes.
And normally that's kind of how it goes. Depending on people's belief system, I'll tell you my opinion. I think it's a generational thing to where it is, in my opinion, where selected families or peoples that are chosen, and every generation or so, these things come back, whether it could be a UFO or spirits or anything like that, to where they come back to check out to see how everything's going. I don't know if that's your belief or not, but can you tell us a couple of things about the stories you heard after you came out with this story?
So, I've always been fascinated with my own spirituality, obviously, and the human soul, the condition of that, consciousness, what is that? But I've also been very evidence-based person. And some of the things that I saw before this event, I just, chalked it up to, it's something mundane, right? And never give it too much thought. So after seeing this, you go back and you start revisiting, memories and things that you've had and experiences that you've had, and realize that it's probably been going on for a long time. And as far as like chosen, I try to stay away from that, right? Like, my chosen person, like, I don't think so. I mean, what I've learned is that I don't know anything. We as a society, as a human species, we know very little. We know very little.
No, I agree with you. It's almost, this is why it's funny because this show is a little bit more on the selfish side for me. I'm looking for answers to questions about life, about how we began, or anything like that, our cultures, ancient histories, and mysteries, to where I think that it's almost therapeutic because I get to hear so many different sides and experiences from different people. So, going back to friends and families telling you these stories, when you started connecting the dots, things got a little more clear in your head about, well, yeah, this definitely could have been it, right?
Yeah, I recently, just this week actually, Tuesday, had a hypnotic therapy that helped me gain some more insight to some of the things I've experienced as a person.
And now you mentioned that, and I really, I'm hesitant to get a little personal because these are things that you share with the therapist, and maybe you don't want to share it out to the public like this. But these type of therapists, I don't know about yours precisely, but are they experienced with having
Yeah, she
folks
has like
like yourself?
30 years experience dealing with abductees and stuff like that. I don't think I was abducted, but weird occurrences that happened throughout my life that can't be explained readily. And then, in 2018, all that came to a head for me and kind of crashed the veil of what I thought I knew.
Yeah, and so it was both you and your brother that noticed
Yeah,
this thing over the home, right?
right.
And we'll talk about exactly what it is that you saw, but let me get into the part where in your neighborhood were you all the only ones that witnessed this, or did somebody else say, "Hey, bro, did you check that out? Did you see that?"
So we were in my backyard, and I live in inner Cleveland, West 130th Street. I'm friendly with the neighbors. I know the neighbors, but do you really go knocking on doors going, "Hey, did you see a UFO?"
No, you certainly do
Uh,
not. Yeah.
right. So, I'd rather not be that guy in the neighborhood. I did try to get the 911 calls for my area during that time period to see if someone, called 911 because they're like, oh my God, there's something in the sky. I don't know what it is. But as soon as I said that that's what I wanted to see was anomalous aerial phenomenon being called in, I was like blackballed from listening to those tapes.
I think you used the right key words to say, "Oh no, this guy knows what he's talking about."
I've done some digging of my own. The Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies investigated my case. We did manage to catch video of the second object that we witnessed, and was told it's an advanced drone with no apparent means of propulsion, no appendages, no, flight surfaces. It's an unknown.
Right, and not everything unknown, or like we use the term UFOs, it doesn't necessarily as means of alien or extraterrestrial origin, but I'm not so sure.
The first object, there was no doubt that I can't say where it came from, but it wasn't us. I can assure you that. And it was technological in nature, and it wasn't us. I mean, there's just no way possible that we could create such an object.
Right, we're touching on that because I read a little bit of what you sent me on Twitter earlier this week. Let's go. I don't want to say step by step, but let's go. What did you witness on that day? Because it's I read over it really quick. I didn't put too many details because I didn't want to give it
Sure.
a what do the kids call it nowadays when you ruin an ending on something?
Spoiler.
Spoiler alerts. Yeah. So let's get into it. Go ahead and if you don't mind, tell the.
Yeah, sure. No. It was June 2018. Got home from work. Uh you're familiar with Northeast Ohio. Like we don't get good weather very often, So I was enjoying the evening. It was about 6:30. My brother and I are sitting in the backyard, and I noticed above my house, um, there's it was like a crinkly object, and it's coming at us. So it's getting bigger. I can't looking back. I don't know if it's coming at us or just getting bigger, so it looks like it's coming at us. But I hit my brother. I'm like, do you see that? What is that? Is that a balloon? Is that a drone? What the hell is that? And then, boom! It was 10 feet over my house. It was a 30 to 40-foot metallic sphere. It had a dark cube in the center of it, not quite black. It was like a charcoal color. And then all points of that cube moved in and out of one another, but yet it stayed a cube. The light reflected off of the sphere, and it looked like multicolored flames. Like they were translucent though, so you could see through them. You could still see the object, but there were these rainbow flames coming off it. It hovered over the house for a minute. We were, 50 feet from this thing in broad daylight. We could have hit it with a rock, and we were in shock. We could only, are you seeing this? Are you seeing this? Yeah, I'm seeing it. Yeah, I'm seeing it. My phone was in my pocket. I couldn't even look away from this thing. It was the most fantastic thing I've ever witnessed. And then it slowly started ascending eastward up in the sky. It got, I'd say, about 30, 40 degrees in the east. And three little red lights lit up behind it, little red orbs. They were zipping around, and then they're over here zipping around. Then they're over here zipping around, like without moving in the spaces in between. They were here, then they were there. And it was until the whole thing went out of sight. In shock. Still kind of am. It's been, it's been half a decade, but it's still when I picture it in my mind, we saw it together.
And it's experiences like that because we've talked to different people who have experienced different things, who've seen a Bigfoot perhaps that's been pretty close. They never forget that day in their life because out of the UFO witnesses and folks that have been on the show and written books or made documentaries, this is the only one that I can think about where 10 feet over you, over the house, that's the closest thing I've heard so far of somebody saying anything. Now, let me ask this question because how did you feel? I'm not talking emotionally, but I'm talking as far as your body. Were you not able to move? And I know when we see things, we're in shock. We might not even move anyway because we might not process or believe what we see was happening. But how did you feel physically when this object was over your home? Now, I'll say again, 10 feet. That is not a great distance.
No, it was about, so I have a single story home. It was 10 feet over my house, about 50 feet from us. How I felt was I couldn't look away. I didn't want to move. If it was a hallucination, it was the most magnificent hallucination I have ever experienced, and didn't want to leave that moment. But he saw it too, and you can't share hallucinations. And in the moment, it was just sheer shock and awe. Like, this should not exist. A flying tesseract in a sphere should not exist. This shouldn't be here, and yet here it is, hovering over my home. My daughter was inside, and later I was kind of upset. I was mad because somebody's playing with their fancy stuff over my house with my kids inside it, right? So that's kind of what made me really want answers, is to just hold somebody accountable. But who do I hold accountable to? Like, it wasn't a convertible. I didn't see who was flying it, but there's two absolute facts that I have, is that it was a real object. It did not run on energizers.
Now, did it make any noise at all?
No noise.
Wow. That's a super stealth technology from an audio's perspective. Obviously you saw it, but so no noise. Were there any electrical disturbances in the homes, any vehicles, or because you said you had your phone also next to you?
Yeah, well, it was in my pocket. And we were sitting in the chair until it materialized fully. And then we both stood up and were just aghast, like, as far as electric disturbances, no. I went on top of my house to see if there was any potentially like residue or residual from the object. Like I said, my daughter was in the home, so for her, it was closer to her, even though she couldn't see it. It was probably only 20 feet above her head. Um, she has suffered no effects. She was in the house watching videos. As far as I know, the videos kept playing, so there was no electronic disturbances to report on it.
And that is amazing because it's been my understanding that those type of things do happen when there's a UFO sighting or it comes close to electronic devices or vehicles or anything of that sort. When you climbed to the roof, you said there was no residue, so there was no heat, no cold, no burn marks on the shingles,
No, I
anything.
mean, I didn't immediately go up there. It was a couple weeks later.
Okay, I wouldn't do it immediately either. So yeah,
Yeah, because I was still like in shock. That night, I called the Air Force. I didn't know who else to call because it was, to me, it's, I mean, they probably want to know about it, but they don't. So either they already know about it or they're embarrassed. I don't know.
maybe a little bit of both,
Yeah.
because I mean, there's no way they don't know.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so your eyewitness account, and then you made your call to the Air Force. Now, were there any media reports after that? Because they're really good about getting these stories sometimes.
Yeah, no. There was
Nothing.
nothing. That's what I thought too. I thought somebody else had to have seen this, at least one of these. I was put in touch with the chief of the FAA over here in Northeast Ohio and was told they only keep records for 6 months. So I couldn't get any FAA data because the third object we saw was behind, like right behind a passenger aircraft. That's how we noticed it, as I was pointing out an aircraft. I was like, I know what an airplane is. See, that's an airplane. And I pointed at the airplane and I was like, but that's not. And right behind it was a little top hat shaped, the classic UFO, a little top hat shape. It zipped up into the sky and then boop, disappeared. Right behind that passenger aircraft. So
So it would
tracked.
be obvious to people like you and I, that aircraft had to have seen something, made a report somehow. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, we're not going to get a hold of those reports or the audio. I'm sure if we even fill out a request, it'll be black line paper after paper. Is there a chapter of MUFON in your area that maybe did you call them or did they contact you about this?
Well, I called them first. I really didn't get a response. So then I actually just kind of tried to put it away, right? Like, okay, I mean, how does this really, I still got to go to work. I still got to pay the bills. I still got to do all the normal things that we got to do. But now my entire view on everything is completely in ruins. I mean, we're told by our chief scientists, oh, this could never be the case. They could never come here. And like, I just saw one, dude. Like, at what point do we just say, okay, that's a very likely possibility that non-human intelligences operate within our atmosphere. Where they're from, I don't know until you sit down and talk to one, right?
Right, and they'll talk to you when they're damn good and ready. But because you said something funny, not funny, but interesting that when they said we don't know where they came from, or they would say something like that, but they're already here. It's
Yeah,
not, we don't know. You can talk about outer space or dimensional gates, but they're already here. My
sure,
opinion. It's they've been here long before we were here.
right.
And
Yeah, I
so,
mean, I used to think, I was pretty atheist in my viewpoints, like, but now, is everything in the Bible really true? Like, did they really see all this, right? And it was just they confused technology for divinity, right? And wrote it in their way. So it may not be capital G God in the sense that created all time and space, because why would humans be the center of that? Like, you look at the vastness of things. We've never been the center of anything, even though we think we're the center of everything, right? From history on to this point, like, we thought we were the center of the universe, then we thought we were the center of the solar system, then we thought we were the center of the galaxy, and none of that is true. So, but now, like, maybe they were seeing things and confuse that with divinity, and maybe these beings portrayed themselves as divine.
No, and there's a popular theory out there where I think it was von Daniken, where say if you just switch out the word angels to aliens, things start making more sense.
Well, sure. I mean, have you read the biblical description of an angel?
Yes,
They're
they're pretty
horrifying
terrifying.
creatures. Like, yes,
They're,
yes,
they're
very
not beautiful.
horrifying. No, not at all. But they always lead with the premise, "Don't be afraid, human."
Yeah, it's easy for them to say, but you got four faces and you look pretty terrifying to me. But
Right.
if you're here to help me, okay, I'm good with that.
Well, that's another thing too. Is like I haven't. I mean, through all history, there's only been very few cases of fatalities, right, and in sickness. I think that may be a side effect. I mean, but who can tell? They could just be scouts. Like we don't know what's going on. We think we do. We don't know. Then whatever the Air Force knows, they're definitely not telling us.
No, we're not going to hear
I don't think they ever will. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that's hundreds of years away, maybe. I
Yeah,
hate to be nihilistic and pessimistic about it, but I mean, they haven't given us much in 80 years, right? So,
not really. And I think it was kind of a hot item the last couple of years with disclosure. And we get bits and pieces of things, because they even talked about it on the news network. And I think the only high rated news anchor, Tucker Carlson, not to get into the politics part, but he made a pretty convincing special where this stuff, and I say might, we know, but for the general population, hey, this might be real. You may want to really take this more seriously.
well, the preponderance of evidence is overwhelming. I mean, like, where's the evidence? Well, there's tons of it. If you just accept it and just don't write it off immediately, like James Fox, the Varginha case in Brazil. I mean, he kind of blew the lid off of this thing where they found beings. A person was killed by carrying one because it had a substance on it that caused this man to have an infection and not be able to fight it off. That's the type of thing you might expect from a being not from here, right? Like, and then the entire town, like, there were so many witnesses, it's impossible to just disregard this case. And there are literally hundreds of these types of cases. So, yes, 90% of the things that people report and see can be misidentified aircraft or balloons or birds or any prosaic explanation you want to throw at it. But that doesn't account all of it. There's still, 5 to 10% of cases that just cannot be explained that way. And these are the real serious cases that need to be, first identified and then studied by serious, credible people. That would be tremendous. And I don't think disclosure is going to happen. Everybody wants answers. I want answers, certainly, of course. I'd love to have them rolled out on a silver platter, but I think the best we can hope for is a deeper understanding, because as we get more answers, we're going to have more questions, right? So if the government was to come out and say, okay, aliens are real, now comes the whole floodgate of where are they from? What do they want? What can we get? And all of those questions that come with it. So that's why they're going to be like, we better not tell them the truth.
True. And it's not just the government here in the country we live in it, but it's a global thing.
Yeah.
As in the UK as well, where similar things are happening but not being reported.
Sure. I mean, the ridicule and stigma has been there. It's still there. But everybody has a story. What's funny though, you talk to people about UFOs and they're like, oh, well, this one time I saw something, weird happen. It's like, well, if so many people have had these experiences, then I mean, why is it so bad to look at it through the lens of science, through the lens of, academics, and really take a serious look, put some money in it. Like, there's something here, and it's kind of all connected, and it really kind of involves us. I don't think we're the center of things, but we're at least participants.
We're important to somebody out there. But
Yeah.
it's funny because I've had conversations in the past with individuals where one would ask, well, what's the harm? And let's just come out of the UFO phenomenon and come out of the closet with it and say, okay, this is real. What's the big deal? I'm saying, in my opinion, it's fear. I think it will change the way people view their religion, their purpose in life, and our reported history. I think it would be kind of like a mind f on them, where
I think
where do
it's
we?
different though. I think it's
Yeah,
I think it's greed, pure and simple. The people that control the technology control the world, right? So if you were to just have free energy tomorrow, how many billionaires are going to go bankrupt? How many rich people are going to lose their fortunes, right? Because it's all based on energy. Once you have a free energy society, jobs tend to become meaningless. The economic structure of humanity would collapse. And I think that's what they're afraid of. They're afraid of losing their pocketbooks.
and he who has the goal control makes the rules, right?
That's it.
Interesting. So we're talking about evidence and things caught. I was going through your Twitter for show prep earlier, and I saw this, and let me go back because you've uploaded I think it was it from a couple of years ago, perhaps. I would click on it now, but I don't want to mess this interview up. Where you have, was it a tic-tac object on that video? I think it's pinned to
Yeah,
your,
it's in my profile. Yeah.
yeah. Let's talk about that and how has that been received by at
Um,
least by UFO Twitter. Yeah.
I get the few people, oh, it's just a cloud or whatever. Well, I had forensic, you know, I had doctors of forensic optics look at it. And this is what I was told, that it appears to show an advanced drone with no appendages, no flight surfaces, or any other means of propulsion by those guys. So, I mean, I put it up there for everybody because that was, so after we seen this sphere with the cube in it, we're in the driveway. We're kind of in a froth. It's still daylight. I mean, it's still day. I happen to look up over my neighbor's house to the right of us on the east side of the street, and lo and behold, there's this orange glowing tic-tac just hovering there, just floating. And I'm like, holy crap, it's another one. And yeah, my brother managed to get his phone out and capture probably, about a minute, but there's probably about 30 seconds that's where you could really tell that that's not an airplane, man. That's not a balloon. That's not a bird. That's not you know, go ahead down the list. What you're left is with what is they call a true unknown. It's an unknown. And my hypothesis of this event is that the the cubanosphere is an interdimensional object that comes from a fourth dimension, and these other two objects are from this dimension and universe and have some way of detecting that this object entered, and they came to investigate, or they came to clean up after it. But one way or another, I mean, you don't see all these objects in the course of 2 hours over Cleveland, you know. And I rack my brain of why would there be a UFO meeting over Cleveland, Ohio? Yeah, I have a NASA. There's NASA down the street, the Lewis Research Center. Maybe they're working on something, but they don't. It's hardware and software right there. They make computer programs, not flying tesseracts.
Not for another 1,000 years, at least not with our technology. Perhaps they detected something, some sort of technological anomaly where, well, let's check it out and see where they're at today. I believe that when there's times of war, and no, let me go back because I'm not a great historical person, but I understand that during the times of World War II, there was a lot of reports of these things, especially after the nuclear bombs were dropped, where there are more UFO sightings during that time. I think that's around that time is when it started becoming more popular again.
Yeah, I mean, I think we were looking up more.
Mhm.
War nerves. It just came out of World War II. Look at the Battle of L.A., right?
You
where
read
they
my
shot
mind.
at
Yeah.
a thing, right? They shot at something. They didn't hit a damn thing, even though they shot like what 4,100, anti-aircraft warheads at it. Like, still didn't hit it. But in that picture on the front of the LA Times, there, it clearly looks like a saucer.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I mean, you could lay the case out like in a courtroom, you would win your case. There. I mean, from the nuclear age to today, this very day, I'm sure there's something happening right at this moment as you and I are speaking. Somebody is seeing something they can't explain. I don't know why we just kind of bury our heads in the sand about it, right? Like the debunkers are all just, it can never be that. Like, I mean, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that's exactly what's happening. And I think we need to prepare ourselves, you know, for that event, for that
I agree.
contact moment, right? Where it does become public knowledge because the skies aren't classified and these beings can do whatever the hell they want. So one day they may just decide to say, hey, you know what? We're going to do this in a public way and land in all the major cities in the world and create a dialogue, right?
As often as science fiction movies are usually the predictors of things that are actually going to happen, because most of these, at least the science fiction movies, is always over major cities, high visibility, and then
Mm.
things go awry sometimes from there. But that's Hollywood sometimes, not reality.
Yeah.
Um, as we're getting close to the end of the episode, let me ask you again. I know you say after the sighting you had to go back to work life as normal,
Right.
and this has been on your mind since 2018. Understandably so. Are you working on anything UFO related currently? Because I know we mentioned the projects that you work on before. Are you writing anything, making any films? Are you doing any other shows to get this story out there?
So right now I'm active in the community. I'm a member of what's called North Coast Aerial Phenomenon Project. It's for people that have had experiences or have knowledge or are just curious about the subject. We meet once a month here in Cleveland, and we usually have a guest speaker that comes in and gives us a presentation. Last month we had Jesse Peak, MUFON investigator, good friend. He came in, he did a presentation that was really cool. Next month, May, we have Kelly Chase. She's gonna do a presentation for us. So, because for me, it's the individual people that are affected by this phenomena and have nowhere to turn. I mean, for me, that was kind of the biggest part in the beginning was the helplessness that I felt that comes with this. Like, it's such a phenomenal thing, and I'm just some guy from Cleveland, right? Who the hell is going to believe me? But I can't change what happened to me, whether you believe it or not, right? Like, so I'm going to help others that have experiences and maybe have similar, emotional responses to it, so we can kind of, they're not alone. We're not alone out here, and we're not alone with each other. I mean, we have each other, and UFO Twitter gets a lot of heat sometimes, and rightfully so, but it's a valuable resource and for people in the topic, and this topic leads to many other connected topics, whether you like it or not. It's all interconnected, and the more of us that get along and work together, we can come to that deeper understanding that we want. Right? It's not going to happen overnight.
No, it
Nothing.
takes nothing happens overnight. It takes years. And you're talking about the community. You mentioned Jesse Peak earlier. A tremendous person in the UFO community. A great friend of this show, a good friend of yours, and
Yeah.
I always bother him with some questions. He's always right there to answer them. So we love Jesse on this show, and I urge everybody to go listen to his podcast. Man, it's amazing what the work that he does. But what is your advice? We'll end it with this to anyone who witnesses an event such as this. Everybody's gonna be different, but from your experience, what advice would you give somebody that witnessed this? Where should their next steps be?
Don't isolate yourself. I know that's instinctual. We want to be like just kind of recoil from it and say this did not happen. There is no way possible this happened because everyone says it's impossible for this to happen, yet you experienced it. Yet it did happen. You're not alone. You're not by yourself. You can reach out. There are resources. Um, I have a friend also on UFO Twitter, the UAP therapist, Eric Schlimmer. He is a professional licensed therapist in Colorado that is uniquely suited to help people that have had experiences. So they're not misdiagnosed with schizophrenia or something because they really had these experiences. And I think more in the mental health community, he is actually trying to push that forward in the mental health profession that, you know, it needs to be treated as a real trauma. Because, I mean, we're kind of traumatized from it. Like a lot of, you know, there's a lot of emotions, and just don't keep those into yourself. Like, there are those of us out here that have also experienced this, and you know, it's something you got to live with for the rest of your life, but it doesn't have to be a bad rest of your life, right? Like, there's support there for you, and reach out and find that.
Man, it's very, very powerful what you said. I got chills just listening to what you had to say. Very powerful advice, very powerful story. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing it. And if you run into anything, you know, witness anything again, or because I know you're involved with the groups, you know, please come back if you have anything else to add. We'd love to have you back on the
Sure.
show.
Great.
And
I'll come back. Yeah.
it's an amazing conversation, and thank you again for being on. This has been another excellent episode of Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. Please check us out on all our social media pages, as well as our new YouTube channel. Before we go, I'd like to thank our good friend James and Angry Bear Coffee for helping spread the word about this show. Please check them out at angrybearcoffee.com. That's angrybearcoffee.com. They offer free shipping to all United States orders. Let him know that co-host Diego sent you. Thank you for taking this journey with me. Until next time, my friends.
Thank you for listening to Let's Find Out with co-host Diego. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Pocket Casts, and on Anchor. For more information about Let's Find Out with co-host Diego, please visit us on facebook.com/co-host Diego, on Twitter at co-host_Diego, and on Instagram as co-host Diego. Copyright co-host Diego. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.